My name is Emma Anderson, and I learned early that being the youngest in a family of overachievers meant you were either invisible or the punchline. In the Anderson family, I was both. My brother Marcus was the golden child. Harvard MBA. Management consultant. The kind of person who wore tailored suits to family dinners and talked about synergistic opportunities, while passing the mashed potatoes. He'd built Anderson Consulting Group from the ground up, or so the family narrative went. 5 years in business, 23 employees, clients across 3 states. Mom called him her visionary. Dad called him the future of this family. They called me the creative one, which in Anderson family language meant the disappointment. I'd graduated from a state school with a degree in graphic design. I worked freelance. I lived in a modest apartment in the Arts District. I drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic. At family gatherings, I smiled politely while Marcus held court, describing his latest corporate transformation project while everyone hung on his every word. What they didn't know, what I'd deliberately kept hidden for 3 years, was that I'd built something too. It started small. A freelance design project for a tech startup that couldn't afford a proper agency. They paid me in equity instead of cash. The startup exploded. My small stake became worth $340,000. I reinvested. Then again. And again. I studied everything I could about angel investing, venture capital, strategic business development. I had a gift for spotting companies on the verge of breakthrough. Within 2 years, my portfolio had grown to $8.2 million. By year 3, I was managing $31 million in strategic investments across 17 companies. I operated under an LLC. I used investment firms as intermediaries. I never attended board meetings in person, always via secure video link. I kept my name out of press releases and company announcements. To my family, I was still Emma, the struggling freelancer who does little design projects. The irony was that one of my largest investments was in Marcus's consulting firm. 3 years ago, Anderson Consulting Group had been hemorrhaging cash. Marcus had overextended, hiring too fast and spending recklessly on a downtown office that cost $28,000 a month. He'd been 3 months from bankruptcy when a mysterious investor appeared, offering $3.2 million in capital in exchange for silent partnership status. No voting rights, no operational control, just quarterly financial reports. Marcus had been desperate enough to accept without asking too many questions. That investor was me. I'd funneled the money through 2 investment firms and a private equity structure so complex that Marcus's own attorneys couldn't trace it back to my name. I'd watched from the shadows as my capital saved his business. I'd read every quarterly report. I'd seen how he took credit for turning the company around through strategic vision, when it was my $3.2 million that kept his doors open. I never told anyone. It wasn't about vindication. It was about watching, burning, and waiting. The breaking point came at Dad's 65th birthday party. The entire extended family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends. Marcus had just closed a major deal with a Fortune 500 client. He was the man of the hour, champagne glass raised, describing his negotiation tactics while 40 people listened in admiration. I sat in the corner, nursing a glass of wine when Aunt Patricia approached. "Emma, sweetie," she said with that particular tone of pity that made my jaw clench. "Are you still doing those little design projects?" "I'm working on a few things," I replied neutrally. "That's nice. You know, Marcus's firm is doing so well. Maybe he could throw some work your way? You could design his business cards or something." Before I could respond, Marcus appeared, draping his arm around Patricia's shoulder. "Actually, Aunt Pat, I've been meaning to talk to Emma about that." He looked at me with exaggerated concern. "I heard you've been telling people you're an investor now?" The nearby conversations quieted. "I do some investing," I said carefully. Marcus laughed, not unkindly but with that particular older sibling condescension that cut deeper than cruelty. "Emma, I appreciate the ambition, but you should be careful about representing yourself that way. It could hurt the family's reputation. People know the Anderson name because of the work I've built. When you go around calling yourself an investor with your," he gestured vaguely, "your freelance income, it makes us all look less credible." Aunt Patricia nodded sympathetically. "He's just looking out for you, dear." "I understand," I said quietly. "Good." Marcus squeezed my shoulder. "I'm saying this because I care. The business world is serious. You can't just play pretend and expect people to take you seriously. Stick to your design work. Leave the investment world to people who actually understand it. I smiled politely and excused myself. 2 weeks later, I received the lawsuit. Marcus was suing me for defamation and fraudulent misrepresentation, claiming I'd been falsely presenting myself as a successful investor, and that my deceptive behavior was damaging the Anderson family's business reputation. He was demanding $500,000 in damages and a court order preventing me from describing myself as an investor in any public setting. The petition included testimony from family members confirming I was just a freelance designer, copies of my modest apartment lease, photos of my old Honda, and a detailed argument that my claims of investment success were obvious fabrications designed to elevate her status by association with the legitimate Anderson business achievements. My mother called. "Emma, honey, Marcus is just trying to protect the family. If you just admit you've been exaggerating and apologize, I'm sure he'd drop this." My father was more direct. "This is embarrassing, Emma. Stop this nonsense before it goes to court." I hired the best litigation attorney in the state. Her name was Catherine Price, and she specialized in business defamation cases. When I walked her through my actual financial situation, complete with documentation, her eyes widened. "Ms. Anderson," she said carefully, "you understand that your brother is suing you while being substantially funded by your investment?" "I'm aware," I replied. "And you want to reveal this in court?" "I want to respond to his lawsuit appropriately. Whatever that requires." Catherine smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Then let's give him the truth he's asking for." The courtroom was packed on the day of the hearing. Marcus had made sure of that. He'd invited family friends, business associates, even some of his consulting firm's clients. He wanted witnesses to my humiliation. He wanted everyone to see the family embarrassment being put in her place. I sat at the defendant's table in a simple gray suit, my attorney beside me, a single folder in front of me. Across the aisle, Marcus sat with his legal team, 3 attorneys from a downtown firm that charged $600 an hour. He looked confident, relaxed, occasionally smiling at people in the gallery. Mom and Dad sat in the front row behind Marcus. Aunt Patricia was there. Uncle James. My cousin Bradley, who worked for Marcus's firm. Half the room was there to support the golden child. The other half was there to watch me fail. Judge Raymond Martinez called the court to order. He was a stern-looking man in his late 50s, known for running an efficient courtroom and having little patience for frivolous cases. Marcus's lead attorney, Robert Hutchinson, stood first. He was silver-haired, expensive-suited, the kind of lawyer who exuded authority. "Your Honor," Hutchinson began, "this case is straightforward. The plaintiff, Marcus Anderson, has built a reputable consulting business over 5 years through dedication and expertise. His sister, the defendant Emma Anderson, has been deliberately misrepresenting herself as a successful investor, creating confusion in their shared social and business circles. This fraudulent behavior damages Mr. Anderson's hard-earned reputation and creates liability for his firm. We're seeking damages and an injunction to prevent further misrepresentation." The judge nodded. "Ms. Anderson is claiming to be an investor?" "Yes, Your Honor. Despite evidence showing she's merely a freelance graphic designer with modest income living in a rent-controlled apartment." "I see. Does the defendant actually invest money in anything?" "She may have a small retirement account, Your Honor, but describing herself as an investor, in the same breath as the Anderson family name, known for legitimate business success, creates fraudulent association." Judge Martinez looked at me. "Ms. Anderson, do you represent yourself as an investor?" I stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I am an investor." Marcus smirked. Several people in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. "Could you be more specific about the nature of your investments?" the judge asked. Catherine stood smoothly. "Your Honor, if I may, we'd prefer to address this through evidence rather than testimony at this stage. The plaintiff has made specific claims about my client's fraudulent behavior. We have documentation that directly contradicts every allegation." "Very well. Mr. Hutchinson, present your case." What followed was 2 hours of Marcus's attorney building a narrative of my supposed deception. They called witnesses who testified I'd never mentioned having significant money. They showed photos of my apartment, my car, my modest lifestyle. They presented my tax returns from 3 years ago, before my investments took off, showing freelance income of $43,000. This, Hutchinson declared dramatically, is not an investor. This is someone living a fantasy, and that fantasy damages my client's legitimate reputation. Then they called Marcus to testify. My brother took the stand with the confidence of someone who'd already won. He described building his consulting firm through my own vision and hard work. He talked about the Anderson family reputation. He explained how embarrassing it was to have business associates ask him about his investor sister, when everyone could see I was barely scraping by. She's damaging our family's reputation with her lies, Marcus testified dramatically, looking directly at the judge. I'm not doing this to be cruel. I'm doing this to protect what I've built. To protect our family name. She needs to stop pretending and accept reality. The packed courtroom nodded in agreement. Mom wiped her eyes. Dad looked stern and disappointed, staring at me. I said nothing. I opened my phone under the table and composed an email to my wealth manager, C&G, my investment attorney. Pull all funding from Anderson Consulting Group effective immediately. Begin withdrawal proceedings per Section 7.3 of the partnership agreement. Timeline, 48 hours. I hit send. Marcus's phone, sitting on the plaintiff's table, started binging with notifications. Then again. And again. He glanced at it, frowned slightly, but continued testifying. I've tried to help her, Your Honor. I've offered her work. I've given her advice. But she refuses to accept her limitations and... His phone rang. He stopped mid-sentence, irritated. His lead attorney silenced it. It rang again immediately. Judge Martinez frowned. Mr. Anderson, please silence your device. Yes, Your Honor, I apologize. It rang a third time. Then a text notification chimed. Then another. Hutchinson stood. Your Honor, may we have a brief recess? There seems to be some emergency. We've only just started, Counselor. Mr. Anderson can check his messages during our scheduled break. Continue your testimony, Mr. Anderson. Marcus looked rattled now, his confident demeanor cracking. Of course, Your Honor. As I was saying, my sister's behavior. His attorney's phone rang. Then his second attorney's phone. Within 60 seconds, all three of his legal team's phones were buzzing simultaneously. The judge's patience evaporated. What is happening? Hutchinson checked his phone. His face went white. He showed the screen to his colleagues. All three lawyers turned to stare at Marcus, whose own phone was now ringing continuously. Your Honor, Hutchinson said carefully, I need to request an immediate recess to consult with my client. Denied. What's happening? Marcus grabbed his phone. He read the screen. I watched the color drain from his face. He scrolled frantically, his hand shaking. Then he looked up, not at the judge but directly at me. For the first time in our lives, I saw fear in my brother's eyes. Your Honor, Catherine stood smoothly, if I might address the court's question? I believe Mr. Anderson is receiving notification that his consulting firm's primary investor is withdrawing their $3.2 million in capital, effective immediately. The courtroom erupted. Judge Martinez banged his gavel. Order. Ms. Price, how would you know about Mr. Anderson's business financing? Because my client is that investor, Your Honor. Silence. Complete absolute silence. Marcus stood at the witness stand, gripping the rail. That's impossible. Catherine opened our folder. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence the complete partnership agreement between Anderson Consulting Group and Clearwater Investment Holdings, LLC, dated 3 years ago. This agreement provided $3.2 million in emergency capital when Mr. Anderson's firm was 3 months from bankruptcy. She handed copies to the bailiff, who distributed them to the judge and opposing counsel. You'll note, Catherine continued, that Clearwater Investment Holdings is a private equity structure wholly owned by my client, Emma Anderson. You'll also note Section 7.3, which allows the investor to withdraw all capital with 48 hours notice under specific circumstances, including legal action taken by the recipient company or its principals against the investor. Judge Martinez was reading the agreement, his expression shifting from confusion to surprise to something that might have been amusement. Ms. Anderson, you've been funding your brother's business for 3 years? I stood. Yes, Your Honor. And he didn't know? The agreement specified silent partnership status. He knew he had an investor. He didn't know the investor's identity. Marcus's lead attorney was frantically reading the agreement. Your Honor, even if this is legitimate, it doesn't address the defamation. Actually, Catherine interrupted smoothly, it directly addresses every allegation in the complaint. Mr. Anderson claims my client fraudulently represents herself as an investor. The evidence shows she's invested $3.2 million in his company alone. We have additional documentation showing her complete investment portfolio if needed. How much? The judge asked. I met his gaze. Current portfolio value is $31.4 million, Your Honor. 17 companies. Annual returns averaging 34% over 3 years. The courtroom exploded again. Marcus sat down heavily in the witness box, his face ashen. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad just stared. Mr. Hutchinson, Judge Martinez said sharply, your client is suing his own primary investor for fraudulent misrepresentation while that investor has been keeping his business solvent? Hutchinson looked like he wanted to disappear. Your Honor, we were not aware. That much is obvious. Ms. Price, do you have the documentation to support these portfolio claims? Yes, Your Honor. Catherine produced a second folder, this one substantially thicker. Quarterly investment reports, bank statements, LLC documentation, equity positions and third-party valuations. All certified by Grant Thornton LLP. The judge reviewed the documents. The silence stretched. Marcus's phone kept ringing. His attorneys huddled in whispered conversation, shooting desperate glances at their client. Finally, Judge Martinez looked up. Mr. Anderson, did you perform any due diligence on your sister's actual financial status before filing this lawsuit? Marcus opened his mouth. Closed it. Your Honor, it seemed obvious that she couldn't possibly. You assumed, the judge said flatly. You looked at her car in her apartment and you assumed. Then you sued her for defamation based entirely on your assumptions. Your Honor, Hutchinson tried desperately, even if she has money, the claim was about reputation damage. The claim was that she was fraudulently misrepresenting herself as an investor. The evidence shows she's a highly successful investor who was anonymously funding the plaintiff's business. There's no fraud here, Mr. Hutchinson. There's just a man who didn't bother to verify his accusations before dragging his sister to court. Catherine spoke quietly. Your Honor, we're prepared to file a counterclaim for malicious prosecution, abuse of process, and the business damages caused by being forced to withdraw our investment to protect our client's interests. Marcus's head snapped up. Business damages? Mr. Anderson's lawsuit triggered the withdrawal clause. By suing his own investor, he's forced the collapse of his company's capital structure. We estimate damages of approximately $1.8 million in opportunity costs, legal fees and portfolio restructuring expenses. This is insane, Marcus said, his voice cracking. You can't just. I can, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken directly to him. You sued me for being honest about what I do. The partnership agreement has a specific clause for this scenario. You just never bothered to read it carefully. Hutchinson was speed reading the agreement now. He found section 7.3. His shoulders slumped. Your Honor, request a brief recess to discuss settlement options with our client. Granted. 30 minutes. Judge Martinez looked at me. Ms. Anderson, I assume you're willing to discuss terms? That depends on what my brother is willing to acknowledge, Your Honor. Marcus stared at me from the witness stand. In his eyes, I saw the exact moment he realized what he'd done. Not just the lawsuit. Not just the financial disaster. But 32 years of dismissing his sister without ever considering she might be more than his assumptions allowed. Court is in recess, the judge announced. In the hallway outside, Marcus approached me while our attorneys negotiated in a conference room. The confident, suit-wearing consultant was gone. He looked exhausted, defeated, his expensive tie loosened. Why? He asked. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? He had no answer. 3 years ago you were desperate, I continued. You came to Sunday dinner and you looked terrified. You didn't say anything but I could see it. Your business was dying. So I helped. Anonymously because I knew if you found out it was me, you'd never accept it. $3.2 million, Marcus said hoarsely. You saved my company. I invested in your company. There's a difference. I called you a fraud. In front of everyone. You did. Emma, he ran his hand through his hair. I don't even know what to say. I'm so sorry. I'll drop the lawsuit. I'll pay your legal fees. Whatever you want. What I want, I said carefully, is for you to understand something. I didn't hide my success to trick you. I hid it because I wanted to build something real without the family's judgment. Without being the golden child or the disappointment. Just me building something that mattered. You built something incredible, Marcus said softly. And I was so busy being the success story that I never saw it. Catherine emerged from the conference room. Emma, they're offering full dismissal with prejudice, public apology and coverage of all legal fees. I looked at my brother. I want one more thing. Anything, Marcus said. I want my $3.2 million back. Full withdrawal per the agreement. But I'll give you 6 months instead of 48 hours, if you agree to actually read your quarterly investment reports from now on and acknowledge who your investors are. You'll stay invested? Different terms. Transparent partnership. You acknowledge my role publicly. I get board observation rights. And you stop calling me the creative one, like it's a consolation prize. Marcus nodded, tears in his eyes. Deal. Emma, I really am. I know. But Marcus, I'm not doing this to save you. I'm doing this because Anderson Consulting Group is a good investment. Don't confuse the two. We returned to court. The settlement was read into the record. Judge Martinez accepted the terms, then looked at Marcus with clear disapproval. Mr. Anderson, I'm dismissing this case, but I want to be clear. You wasted this court's time and resources on a case you should never have filed. You made assumptions, weaponized the legal system against your own family, and it spectacularly backfired. If I see another case this poorly researched in my courtroom, there will be sanctions. Understood? Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Anderson, the judge said, his tone softening slightly, thank you for your patience with these proceedings. And congratulations on your investment success. Don't let anyone make you hide that again. Thank you, Your Honor. Court was adjourned. In the lobby afterward, my family waited. Mom approached tentatively. Emma, honey, we had no idea. I know. Why didn't you tell us? Dad asked, genuinely confused. Because every time I accomplished something, you assumed it was small. Every time I tried to share, someone changed the subject to Marcus's latest deal. So I stopped sharing. Aunt Patricia, who'd suggested Marcus give me business card work, looked mortified. Emma, I'm so sorry. I just thought. You thought I was failing because I wasn't succeeding in ways you recognized, I said, not unkindly. It's okay. But maybe from now on, ask people about their lives instead of assuming. 6 months later, Anderson Consulting Group's quarterly report included a new section, Strategic Investors. My name appeared first, along with my investment amount and board observer status. Marcus sent the report with a handwritten note. First quarterly report I've actually read in 3 years. Thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave up on you. I framed it and hung it in my office. The downtown office I finally stopped hiding. Right next to my Forbes 30 Under 30 feature from that same week. The Anderson family reputation survived just fine. I just had to make room for 2 success stories instead of 1. And I kept my Honda Civic. Some things aren't about appearances. Some things are about remembering where you came from and who you became when no one was watching.